Hey guys, welcome to another video, Purple Political Talk here. And in today's video slash live stream, we're going to go in and do an in-depth analysis of this presidential debate that we just saw through the different main news networks that was projected everywhere. And we have a lot of things that we get to know from this debate. There are many crucial factors and facts that we get. There's many different impacts on the election that could be taken. And we're going to go through, talk about what each candidate did correct, what they did wrong, what they could have done better, and the general structure of the debate, and answer a very important question. Who won this presidential debate? So before we get started, please remember to like, subscribe, and turn on post notifications to be up to date with our latest content. So let's get started. At this point in time, I must say that debate was probably definitely more civil than the first one. And they both did a very good job. They both held their ground. One attacked, they fought back, and it was in a civil manner. There was no clowns. There was no calling each other clowns. There was no very big debatey type things that usually happen, especially since we saw during the first presidential debate when they were literally taking each other apart, not even in a civil manner, but in just like a very, very circus-like manner. And at this point, I am very impressed with how both candidates handled themselves during the debate. So let's answer the big question. Who do I think won the debate? At this point in time, I think it was a pretty even debate. While Donald Trump was pushing on the more aggressive side, which really might have given him the victory, I think that we could definitely see a plausibility of both candidates winning. However, I would say this debate was very, very tight. I think it was the tightest out of all the debates. And it was definitely tighter than the Pence debate. And it's at 100% like tighter than the first debate. At this point in time, I'm going to do the analysis, and after kind of tell you guys my thoughts, tell you guys my general feelings and ideas that I currently have from the debate, I will come up and crown a winner of this debate. But first thing I want to talk about is how this debate was very civil. And I must say, I am somewhat impressed on how the debate is now more civil, and they took some measures to make sure everything ran well. They took some measures so everything ran smoothly. They did the muting things, and I think this was something that was very good. And I think I'm going to give it up to the moderator. She did a very good job, and I think she did a very good job almost splitting the time evenly. She did a pretty good job at stopping the candidates with the mute button, and truly, a lot of people thought the mute button was going to be used a lot, and truly, if I could really count, there was only like one moment that I remember clearly, and it was Donald Trump was speaking, and they just had to mute him, and overall, I think it was pretty good management of the debate, and I think that's something we definitely must analyze, because considering how the last two debates have been pretty crazy, they've been not as smooth. I think it's it's very good to say that this debate was run very well. So getting into some of the policy issues, at the beginning, of course, like the last couple of debates, COVID-19 has been the biggest talking point, as truly this is what has been affecting Americans all across the nation. So both candidates held their ground. Biden was going more through the perspective of, well, there's 220,000 people dead. There's this many people, and he went strictly off numbers. Donald Trump was playing more the comparative angle. They both did a good job at holding their ground and attacking each other. Definitely, that wasn't the more interesting part of the debate. It was more serious because this affects more Americans. However, it was something that it was very interesting, and I think at the beginning, we saw how both of them started to hold their ground. And I'm going to start getting into some of the specifics. And like I'm seeing in the chat right now, like Ron is saying, the moderator gave 10 seconds to respond for Trump and no time limit for Biden. I did notice that on occasion. And I think that's something to analyze. I think, generally speaking, the moderator was maybe if you had to say the moderator, like if you had to choose, leaning more towards Biden, just because if you saw some of the timing things. However, overall, I think it was a pretty even to both sides type of debate, and I think it was very down the middle, and the moderator was pretty unbiased in most cases. Sometimes the questions that were asked, and I don't know if it was just circumstance that she just wanted to move on to the next question, or if it's because Joe Biden had a tough question about when they started talking about Russia, which you're going to get into later in this live stream. And I think she started moving away from it. So it's definitely something that we must analyze. So going back to what we were talking about with COVID-19, truly the president there held his ground while Biden attacked very, very well. And if we had to give that segment to someone, I think it would definitely be Joe Biden, but by a narrow margin. The president held his ground. He wasn't like fully wrecked from it. And I'm going to tell you this after, and we're going to talk about this later on. Who is this debate going to impact? How is it going to change the election and the electoral map? And truly, what's going to be the true impact on this election? Now, I think definitely, without a doubt, the best and most entertaining, if that's what we're talking about, part of the debate was when they started talking about China, when they started talking about Russia, about essentially Hunter Biden's big media story, which really sometimes, if you look at it, it has been somewhat covered up by the mainstream media. However, we saw it being covered in the debate. Donald Trump hit Biden hard in that part of the debate. And there was times that I think like Donald Trump definitely took the very, very, very aggressive point of view there. And overall, it was a very good thing for Donald Trump during that segment. He called out Biden. While Biden tried to attack Trump for some of the things he did in China or on the bank accounts, all of that, the things that Trump was claiming, and he made it very convincing for a lot of people. If you look on Twitter, if you look on different places, Donald Trump made it convincing for voters that Biden might have done something with China. And that general putting things like that for him is going to be beneficial getting those independent voters. Now, talking more policy-wise, I think it was a very tough segment. Both candidates really went into it. They both were really talking about it, and they truly got into it. And I think it's something we must analyze. And at this point in time, just to be frank, that segment was won by President Donald Trump. There's many factors that definitely go into it. However, I think that we saw just a strong performance of him attacking Biden during that segment. Now, this debate, I would say, although it was pretty even, this debate is a deciding factor in this election. Not so much on who's going to win, but more on, is it going to be somewhat over for Trump, or is it going to be like, does he still have a chance? So we're going to take a look at that. And I think as we went through the debate, we saw many different impacts and many different things that could have told us Biden could have a big lead come November 3rd. So the first thing I wanted to notice is that, for example, foreign policy this debate was kind of what usually would be the foreign policy debate, because usually the way they structure these debates is they kind of throw one debate for everything combined, one of the economy, healthcare, and those issues, and then solely a debate almost on solely foreign policy and the big issue of the time. During this debate season, we could say they essentially covered all the issues in both debates. So I think at this point in time, we saw a very, 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 very interesting response, especially during the foreign policy section. There were some moments and times that we saw Biden really get confused. And I think during that foreign policy segment, you could see Biden was a little lost in certain ways. And I think, honestly, that is one thing that we saw, that the Biden started getting a little bit kind of, how could I explain this? Lost in the air a little bit, and he started stumbling on his words. And of course, that is normal. Everyone has these hiccups and moments. However, at the presidential stage, it doesn't look too great. You know what I mean? And he was talking, instead of saying the president of China, Xi Jinping, he was talking directly and saying just the president of China, using vague terms. And it seemed at points that he was unknowledgeable about situations, which I'm sure he probably knows about that situation. He was vice president for 8 years? And he definitely has to know about that. However, it did not seem like that. And with Donald Trump's attack during foreign policy, I think that segment went to President Trump. Here's a segment which I really think went down the middle, if not actually more to Biden. It was the segments considering the racial relations in America. And it was a segment regarding Black Lives Matter. It was a segment regarding these big issues. And it's truly become a thing where, for example, the Republicans are being attacked for not supporting Black Lives Matter, the organization. And because the Democrats politically, they take that and market it. The Republicans are taking Black Lives Matter, the organization, and marketing is all the rights and blaming all on that. So we're seeing both sides go at it. We saw that during this debate. we saw, I mean, kind of the Donald Trump didn't say it that much, but the way that he was taking the tone about Black Lives Matter, we could tell we could imply, due to some of the things he said in the past, that is what he was saying. So just thinking about it, for example, with the Black Lives Matter chat and things like that they had, we saw more of the Democrat strategy that we're seeing over and over again, which is attack the president for not supporting Black Lives Matter. Let's call it Inc. Because that's usually what, for example, when a lot of the analysts call it, like especially the more conservative when they're always talking about this. And well, the Republicans, they really don't like the riots and things like that. So they market Black Lives Matter Inc. as that. So keep those two things in mind. During the debate, I think both sides went hard at it. Biden probably took the victory in that segment just because the way that he just talks was more like a politician. Here's the thing. There's certain things during this debate that we must analyze. Sometimes these politicians just need to act like politicians, especially when it comes to like touchy and more sensitive topics. Because look, and I think Donald Trump made it very clear. I don't know if you guys caught onto that Donald Trump was talking about how he was not a politician, and he's bringing in those claims. And truly, to be honest, we saw how, like, for example, I don't know if you guys remember Ivanka Trump's RNC speech, and she said this quote: "Donald Trump has changed Washington. Washington has not changed Donald Trump." It's the same quote, but backwards. I think it was something that really applied, and I think Donald Trump could use that as a campaigning point because truly, I mean, since Donald Trump got to office, Washington has been the same. It's like Donald Trump dropped a bomb on Washington. It's been insane. It's truly been insane. And I'm going to say the following. During that debate, Donald Trump made it clear that these speeches that what Biden was giving essentially was, please, I mean, look, if you have no one sitting next to you, that was during the COVID-19 scene, you had no one sitting next to you, you turn around in bed, you don't have your loved one there. Those types of speeches are usually more political, and like a politicians, you have to understand, are people that are looking for people to vote for them. That's just the simple fact. And I mean, Donald Trump pretty much called out Biden for being the typical politician, and that claim was strong. And overall, I think we saw like a lot of like back and forth with the economy. We saw with certain things. And during the debate, what I think Donald Trump did a very good job at is saying, you had all this time in government, you didn't do anything. Now, what did we see Biden do very well at? We saw Biden excel at attacking Trump for some of the things that he has said. And even though maybe they're out of context, like some things that Trump said out of context with Biden, we saw Biden attack Trump in certain instances, as we saw Biden do very well. And I think we saw those instances, for example, attacking Trump on some of the race relations stuff, bringing up those comments. And I think that's something very interesting. Another big topic of the debate, which I was really interested in, because truly this has been one of the forgotten topics of this election. Well, in 2016, this was the biggest issue, immigration. During this debate, it was briefly touched on, but I mean, at this point, even with domestic issues that really impact like a lot of people, like immigration impacts some people, but it's not going to impact like not majority of Americans, like something like healthcare or the economy might. And in 2016, it was a very big part of the election, and it was shaping up to be a somewhat big part of this election during this time around. However, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, that was all thrown out the window. So I think when they touched on it, we saw both candidates make good points. And what we saw the moderator ask of Trump is, over 500 children are not with their parents. They got separated and they cannot find them. So Donald Trump came in with his argument that the coyotes and the cartels and these people that run those like mafias, if you could call them, down in the border brought them there. And I mean, that could be a valid point. And I think if you look at a lot of the information we have about these organizations, like the cartels, like the mafias, that could be true. Now, Biden did a good job at pulling the heartstrings of Americans and telling them these 550 children will never move. So I think that's something that we have to understand. And Biden did a very good job at that and pulling those heartstrings. And generally speaking, again, that brings me to Biden is a politician. And that is something that he excelled at during this debate. He was being the typical politician, which it could be good or it could be bad. However, I think during this debate, it could have benefited him a lot. We also saw, for example, the segment on climate change towards the end of the debate, which was very interesting, to be honest with you. And during that section of the debate, we saw, Donald Trump attacking the Democrats like they've always have, for example, about the fracking and being inconsistent, like we saw in the last debate with Kamala Harris and Mike Pence. And essentially, it's the Green New Deal, plus that's what Trump was saying. Biden did a pretty good job of defending himself, although I think he had a little bit of a hiccup at the end when he kind of said, the oil industry, goodbye. It probably wouldn't impact him a lot, but in states like Texas, which truly have, the oil industry is a very big thing in Texas. And, a big part of the Texas economy runs on the oil, if not a big majority of it. So I think that was maybe a little bit of a hiccup. And I think with that, climate, he tied it into climate change and his statements about fracking we saw. So that's something that was very interesting. And right now, the debate overall was very interesting. And to be frank with you, I think we saw, a pretty toss-up debate. Now, if you take a look at how the candidates acted throughout the debate, how they presented themselves, how they presented their arguments in a way so they could convince the American people, I think we could say that both candidates had a pretty good job. And again, it depends on how you look at this. Do you think the winner of the debate should be someone that is better at attacking, it's better at pressing their opponent, while still giving somewhat of it's more like a stronger character? And that's the thing. If you win the debate, is it based off of character, or is it based on the policies and the things that you've said? And that really depends, because both candidates have good policies, but they have very, very, very different characters. And in some cases, one could argue that a character like Trump's, which is a lot more strong character, where he's very strong about things, he repeats, he's constantly talking about them. Well, Biden is a little bit more laid back, and I think that's just a general way of being. So those two things probably do have an impact. And if you ask, for example, who wore the pants in the debate, who was in control? Again, Donald Trump was in control because he's the one making these comments constantly, tell me, Joe, go ahead and tell me, Joe. Those types of comments that really, really, really showed us that Donald Trump was wearing a little bit of the control. However, that does not mean that Biden did not have his good moments, because to be frank, he did. And just looking at some of the moments that are most memorable during the debate, during this debate's not going to be as memorable because it's probably going to be forgotten compared to the clown show, the circus we had during the first debate. However, I think we must definitely keep in mind that this debate had some key moments, and I think overall it's going to have to do with relating to COVID-19. It's going to have to do somewhat with Biden's attack on Donald Trump's quote-unquote racism, however you want to call it. So I think that is something very interesting. And one thing that I think Donald Trump did exceptionally, and if you have to give one thing that both candidates did exceptionally at, Trump was calling out Biden for his 47 years, and he used that point. He used the hell out of it. That is something we must understand. While we saw Biden excel at just diminishing and showing that Trump or making people believe, because I'm not going to tell you what to believe or not, but the way Biden was showing it was to show you guys or tell you guys, he was trying to put the idea in your head that Trump morally might be a bad person. So that is something that we definitely must consider. And throughout different things, and at the end of the debate, we saw Trump say this. You've been saying you have a plan for this, that, but you didn't do anything while you were vice president. So again, depends how you take these big one-liners. And of course, Donald Trump's been the type of person to have the big one-liners in the debates. And that is something that we know, from 2016, from now, because again, it's just his personality as someone who, he's a businessman. He is someone who businessmen are strong in that manner. They're always trying to negotiate his deals. So now I'm reading off the chat right now, and I'm seeing a lot of discussion about the oil industry, all of that, which truly I think that was an interesting part of the debate, because Biden essentially kind of said, the oil industry, goodbye. we're going to start transforming into energy, which again, all of this has its pros and cons. Donald Trump laid them out. Biden laid out his. They went at each other. Now, I mean, if you look at what Donald Trump said compared to what Biden said, and maybe the numbers aren't there, if the numbers that Trump provided are the actual thing, which again, it depends how you look at this, where you get your information, and all those different things. However, we saw that be a very big topic of the debate. And in states like Texas, and even like in places like Florida and areas like Montana, which we'll see turn out not crucial, but North Dakota, those areas of the country that heavily rely on oil, those places, if they were remotely considering voting for Biden, a lot of those places where the economy runs almost heavily and solely on oil, it's over for Biden. Now, I'm also going to give a fair point that Jesse has. Biden gave a lot more information about his plans than Trump. That is something we have to understand. Biden did a very good job at explaining his plans. While Biden had his plans, does that necessarily mean they're 100% right? Not necessarily. However, he laid out his plans, which is something that I think President Trump maybe failed to do in a matter, because although President Trump was very good at rebuttaling, he was very good at going against what the bad things were. I mean, he still did do like a lot of like fact checking, and that was solely because we saw former Vice President Biden do an extraordinarily strong job at going through and laying out his plans. Something else that we must keep in mind. Another big thing that was talked about was the economy and the effect of having a $15 minimum wage. We saw Biden argue that truly there is no studies that have shown that a $15 minimum wage will truly have an impact on the election. However, at this point in time, that is something that's very interesting. So, I mean, that is something that we have to look at. I mean, there's, again, arguments on both sides of why it should or should not happen. However, both candidates, they did a pretty good job at presenting what they thought, why they believed they was right, and why they believed the other candidate was wrong. That is something that we saw in this debate that we did not see in the other one. We saw a civil discussion where policy was actually talked about. During the first debate, it was a clown show. I mean, nothing got done. During this debate, we could say it was a lot more highly effective. A lot of more things got done. And truly, I think it's something that we've seen during the debate. I think that truly both candidates, were they both performing at their best of their abilities? No. Could have Trump been a lot more presidential? Yes. Could have Biden been someone more attackive of Trump in a more persistent way? Yes. And I think those are the two things that bring down both candidates. And truly, that's what I think it is. And I think if it wasn't for that, I think if both candidates would have fixed that, I mean, both candidates probably had a very big part of winning. Now, reading some of the stuff in the chat that I'm seeing right now. Socialized medicine. That was another big part of the debate. And it was actually pretty funny because Donald Trump's marketing is that against the Democrats. The Democrats are saying one thing, another, and they're contradicting each other. However, what is something that we're clearly seeing here? We're seeing Donald Trump doing an exceptionally strong job at attacking that. And even though it might not be 100% factual, at a political level, trying to be the politician that's trying to get your vote, your vote, your vote. Because remember, I've said this at the beginning of the live stream. Politicians aren't really there to help. They're just there to get your vote. And when we heard Biden give these speeches, like the person sitting next to your in your dining room chair that's missing because of COVID, those type of speeches are something that a politician would traditionally do. And these politicians love to talk. Does something ever get done? Most likely not. And that is something that we saw during the debate a lot of times. So, I mean, during that socialized medicine, we saw how he truly Trump attacked Biden in that way. And I think with healthcare, Biden laid out a plan. He had at least had something on the table. Trump said what he has done, but not what he will do. Because again, we must understand something. Most undecided voters in the country currently believe there is a very big amount of things messed up with the Medicare system and the healthcare system, whether there should be a public option like Biden says, whether there should be more or less, all of that. So yeah, we're seeing a lot of those sort of things. Neptune is talking about government transparency. Oh, that was another thing that was talked about. This is not directly like relating to transparency. However, the big FBI report that was talked about in yesterday's press conference regarding the Iranian and the Russian governments interfering in the election. Maybe not necessarily because we don't know, but like the FBI is coming out with reports that Florida's voters in Florida and other parts of the country are getting emailed and they're getting intimidated by these foreign countries. That was talked about. Now, the interesting thing was that they didn't talk about it that much in a way who is going to impact. And I would have said, like, if I was one of them sitting on that stage, I would have taken that opportunity to say, my opponent, it's going to support all of them. It's because foreign policy. And Biden tried doing that, but I mean, Donald Trump defending himself very, very well. And what's something else that I noticed about Biden? For the most part of the debate, we saw Biden solely saying, I'm Obama's vice president. I'm Obama's vice president. I was Barack Obama's vice president. Did you know I was Barack Obama's vice president? That is something that we heard during the debate, and it became something that was quite redundant. Again, that's one of the biggest things he has on his resume. Now, I think one of the things that definitely did hurt Biden was the 1994 crime bill, which has been constantly talked about. It's been talked about a lot during this election. And I mean, I wasn't surprised because for the Republicans, that's one of the best ways that they can go to get minority votes, because that 1994 crime bill, if you look at the statistics, really did hurt them. So that's something that like affected Biden in that segment where he probably started off with the lead, but Donald Trump was able to go and attack him with that. So I think that is something that we definitely saw. So we saw many different key factors in the debate that truly have an impact on this election. And overall, I must say that the debate, I'm impressed because both candidates, they exceeded my expectations. After that clown show of the first debate, I think my expectations were set very low. After that, I'm seeing and I'm considering, and I'm actually happy to see that candidates could go and have a civilized debate in a civilized manner where they could truly talk about things, important things in the election. Because at this point in time, as an unbiased voice in this election, here's something I've noticed. This election is no longer about we need to fix our healthcare. This is no longer about we need to fix COVID. This is no longer about we have to fix the economy. This has become a game of Donald Trump is morally a wrong person. Biden is morally a wrong person. Extreme left, extreme right. That is not important in our American system. That is something that I don't understand about this election. It no longer is about policy. It's truly about, there's a lot of people voting on character, which I'm not going to get into right now, but voting by character, I would say, is something that's a little bit imprudent. I personally wouldn't do it, but a lot of people do. So, I mean, right now, I mean, the debate is interesting, and it depends, again, how you look at it. So, yeah, I mean, politics is complicated, like Nikhil is saying. And we're seeing currently, like, a lot of different things, and we're seeing the Republicans come up with their side of the argument. We're seeing the Democrats come up with their side of the argument. Something that I was very interested by that didn't come up that much in the debate. It was kind of like a leading topic, I guess. They didn't talk about Supreme Court hearings because at this point in time, that's not important. Amy Coney Barrett is confirmed. It's over. And they talked about it when they were leading into the topic of healthcare. However, the Supreme Court, not even, which is actually, I'm surprised because they didn't talk about packing the courts, which, again, something has become somewhat of a larger point of this election. And I'm going to tell you something at this point that Biden, when he never gave a clear answer on who he thought if he thought he was going to pack the courts, and not giving a clear answer. I mean, not the best move politically. Something else that we must take into account. And I mean, the most interesting part of the debate, I think, definitely was, like a lot of people are saying, is the Hunter Biden part of the debate and that general corruption theme that we had for that segment. That was interesting. It definitely hurt Biden in many ways because it just seemed like Donald Trump has like facts in some ways. And not necessarily those things are 100% true, everything Donald Trump said. However, the way that Donald Trump presented his argument, it made it seem that way. Now, I want to go on to the next part of this live stream, which is truly analyzing these things in the debate, these different policy choices that and the policy things that they talked about. They talked about China, which is something else, which, again, Biden wants to be a little bit like take the more diplomatic and international law route. Donald Trump wants to take more of the economic route. Again, it's depending on how you look at things. That is something else that was talked about in the debate. However, I want to take a look now. How does this impact the election? Who won the debate in terms of who is it going to help more, and who won the debates in the terms of who was able to defend her arguments in a better way in general? So the easy answer about this is definitely going to end up helping President Trump at this point. Biden is ahead nationally, and again, polls, something that's controversial, and it's something that you have to like put on the balance scale. However, with polling data, we do have 10% lead for Biden. That is his absolute peak for this election. Like, we're 2 weeks from election day after a debate that was pretty close, maybe even favoring Trump in some cases, which if I had to choose a winner, I would narrowly say it's President Trump, although Biden was pretty close. I mean, if you had to put it percentage-wise, it would be 1/10 of 1%. However, I think Biden will probably go down a little bit in the polls. And why? Because he has nowhere but to go but down at this point. He reached his peak, and I think that if we were truly seeing a Biden victory by 10% nationwide, or even in some states, for example, like Florida, I'm from Florida, and I guess a lot of you in my chat probably are from Florida, the chances are that the excitement for Biden doesn't seem like he's leading by 5%. It only seems like he's leading by very small margins or even losing. So that's something we have to put on the balance scale. That's why polls have become a little bit more controversial in a way. So if we believe these polls, Biden has nowhere to go but down. Trump, anywhere he can go is up because he's so far behind. And even though the debate might have been very close, even though the debate might have been tight, at this point in time, it's going to end up helping Trump because there's nowhere else to go for him. And I think that at this point in time, that is something that we saw. Let's see. I bet he won over a ton of Hispanics after he said the people who return are low IQ. I think, to be honest with you, that's something that's going to be taken completely out of context. So let's analyze what Donald Trump was saying, and I want to analyze for facts. So if you guys want, you guys could start putting in the chat claims and things that you think would hurt them. For example, Biden said this, and this, and going to affect it this way, and I'm going to tell you if that's like a fair claim or not. I think that claim about Trump is not that fair because it's taking it out of context. This is talking about illegal immigrants that committed crimes in the U.S. They got deported. They could come back in 2 years if you follow that there's an immigration law that allows them to come back in 2 years. And I mean, the president was just saying that truly, why would you want to come back if you're about to get arrested? But that's a debate for another day. So taken out of context. So that's something we have to think about. Biden and his whole family is corrupt. It's what the Democrats accused Trump of for 3 years. That's what Joshua says. And look, we're getting information, and that Trump campaign press conference with Hunter Biden's former business buddy, that's very big. I mean, at this point, that is something that's pretty big, and I think that is something we must analyze because at this point in time, that is a big part of the debate, and they're talking about corruption. Corruption was a very big part of this debate. Both of them tried attacking each other. Trump, he had a bank account in China. He was trying to do business there. It didn't work out. He closed it. However, I mean, putting in the balance of skills, you tell me, bank account in China versus, according to what Trump is saying, $3.5 million in Russia. We have a ton of money coming in from Ukraine, all these things that he's saying. Which one is worse? The charisma, all of that. Which one is worse? And I want you guys to tell me. I want you guys to be a judge because I'm not going to enforce anything on you. I don't want my political views, which are pretty unbiased, to come into you. I want you guys to have the facts. I want you guys to come up with your own opinions. Also, coyotes, not every American knows that term. That's true. I think he could have done a better job at explaining that. And essentially, for those of you that don't know, which I guess a lot of you here in this live stream probably should have somewhat of a political or at least knowledge about what's going down in the border. Coyotes are groups of people. Usually it's a small group of people, 2 or 3 people, that charge people to bring them illegally across the border through dangerous routes, through the deserts, inside mattresses, those crazy stories that we've heard, which are true, and it's just that they charge for that. So that is something that we have to analyze. And we're seeing, for example, that happening in the border, and that's a struggle we're seeing in the border. And again, that's something we must analyze. And Biden really, his immigration policy was not dealing with the bad stuff. Biden was talking about the illegal immigrants that are good people, and he was talking about how he wanted to give them a pathway to citizenship. He wanted to protect the rights of DACA recipients. Now, on the other side, we saw Donald Trump talking more about the problem at its root. Again, put it in the balance of power. What do you think? Is it better to stop the problem at its root, which in this case is these drug cartels? In this case, it's these coyotes. Or do you think it should just be better if you just grant everyone $9 million and give them a free pass? You be the judge. And at this point in time, it really does depend on how you think about this. And I mean, there's many pros and cons about doing everything. Every decision made by these politicians, everything that comes out of their mouth, any policy they actually get through, anything they campaign on, it's severely planned because they have to critically think about the pros and cons, because truly there's many millions of things that could happen. Whether it be a foreign government attracting, all these different things, that's something to think about. People have been hiding their money in foreign countries since the Stone Age. They don't want to pay taxes or have the illegal activities known. And, that's a true fact. I mean, here's the thing. Talking about taxes, a lot of people who likes paying taxes. I mean, you're making money, but that's not the purpose. What I'm saying is that, for example, Trump's tax returns, that is something they're definitely going hard on, which I want to see the tax returns with my own eyes. The New York Times is reporting something, but again, I mean, the president claims that his accountant said he's paid millions and millions and millions of dollars in that. So I mean, that is something we must definitely analyze. And I think until I see the tax returns with my own eyes, I won't be able to make the judgment, because I want to believe that the president of the United States is a person who, one, stands up for their word, and two, has done fair treatment for the American people. So that is something we must definitely analyze. Trump is rich, and he doesn't have money, and Trump is a businessman. He was an outsider. That is true. Trump is an outsider. We must understand Trump is not a politician. He's nowhere near. He's been in the transition of becoming a politician, and he started to gain those traits. However, Donald Trump is still an outsider in Washington. That is why he's so disliked by a lot of these Republicans that are part of the establishment. That is why he's so disliked by a lot of these Democrats. Who are the people that like Trump? It's outsiders in Washington, including some Democrats. And here's the thing. With the Republican Party, we're hearing this mass exodus. Who are the true people leaving the Republican Party? It's these establishment that have been there for a long time, like very establishment politicians that are just deciding to leave, or establishment members of the party that are starting to leave with President Donald Trump now in the White House and in control of the Republican Party. Donald Trump is in command of the Republican Party. Going over to Biden, that is one thing that we saw, that Biden was being very tied to the Democratic Party and their agenda. That is something that we saw. And I think that's something we must analyze. So Trump was claiming that Biden was going to do everything Bernie Sanders said he was doing. And he claimed that Kamala Harris is somehow more left-wing than Bernie Sanders. I would say that worse, she's the same. But I think for her, she's a little bit more to the right of Bernie Sanders. Besides the point. However, I think that at this point in time, we're seeing a pretty bad trend in that way, politically, that he's getting blamed with everything the Democrats are saying. Because with the Democrats, you have to understand something. They're more divided in a way than the Republicans are. The Republicans are thinking in one ideological train of thought. Both of them are right wing to middle right wing. However, the Democrats range from anywhere Michael Bloomberg, which is almost as right wing as Trump, all the way to your AOCs and Bernie Sanders, which are pretty left wing for American politics. So I think that's something we must analyze. Biden is getting tied with all the things these people say. And think about it. Compare Michael Bloomberg to someone like AOC. Completely different contrast. Their policies might not ever be the same. However, because they're both Democrats, we're going to have to come next to Biden. Which brings me to my next point. Is Biden going to be able to get this border turnout? We're seeing polling data. We're seeing all this different information. But we won't know until we get the information ourselves. And we see the information with our eyes on Election Day when Americans have actually cast their ballots. Polls are just like mocks. You could do something so many times. it still doesn't guarantee that's going to be the result. Obama had an event yesterday. It was open to the public, the media, and it was amazing. 800 or some people came. Trump averages 20. That's true. You know what I feel like also, like, during the last, I've been noticing that Biden hasn't been out campaigning that much. Why? Don't ask me. And yesterday when Obama was doing that campaign, it seemed to me that Obama was the one running for president, not Biden. I don't know if that's just me, but that's what it seemed like. So I'm going to say the following. The debate was definitely a toss-up. And I think picking a side or another might be a little tough, because while Vice President Biden did a very good job attacking Trump, Donald Trump also did an exceptional job. And both of them did an exceptional job at doing it each other. So that is something that we have to think about, because deciding a clear winner for this debate is going to be hard regardless, however you put it. However, I think it's something that's like we have to do. And I think overall, maybe narrowly give it to Trump. Again, it depends what you think. Now, one of the things I'm noticing, and I'm seeing someone mention this in the chat right now, what is one of Donald Trump's strengths right now compared to the Democrats? The Democrats have lost Hispanic support. Even though it might be just in certain areas of the country, which it's not, it's generally speaking, and it's also by, a pretty bad percentage. Here's the thing. Hillary Clinton was horrible with Hispanics. They tried their hardest. They did everything, like, for a Democrat's point of view, especially with someone like Donald Trump running. Hillary Clinton did horrible with Hispanics. We're seeing President Trump perform very well with Hispanics. And Biden, if Clinton was bad for Hispanics, like getting the supporters, where the heck are the Hispanic supporters for Biden? Because it's very hard to see. The left wants to change the narrative, because either they have to say Trump is right to enforce borders, or say we don't have borders. Yeah, I don't know at this point. That is something that you guys have to decide on your own. It's on your own criteria. Hispanic support Biden 62-31. Those are some of the polls that we're seeing. However, I must say that amongst Hispanic voters, we're seeing a very big increase for President Trump, as well amongst Black voters. Among Black Americans and Hispanic Americans, we're seeing an increase. However you put it, whether it be by 1 or 2%, something late, or to in certain parts of the country, big amount of increase for President Trump. For example, in the state of Florida, we're seeing a over 10% increase for President Donald Trump with Hispanics compared to his 2016 numbers, considering that Biden would be losing the same amount from Hillary Clinton's number. Again, that is something that we're seeing over and over again. Now, when it comes to how big this debate will going to be impactful, this debate is probably going to have the last couple of things to the debate. If Biden had completely fallen asleep or something like that, and Donald Trump had blown it out of the park, we might be election frenzy. We wouldn't know what's going to happen. At this point in time, I must say, a Biden victory is looking more and more likely each and every day. However, that doesn't necessarily mean that Biden will be the winner. So, that's definitely one thing that we're definitely seeing. So, yeah, and that's another thing Ron is mentioning. The Congress is more important here. Because, look, I've been saying this for the last couple of weeks. If you have the presidency, congratulations. You have a lot of executive power. You can do your running the administration. You're going to be able to push your platform a lot more. However, this country, in the United States, the power doesn't lie on the presidency like it does in a lot of places. The power truly lies on Congress, because Congress is the person that can grant you the funding. They're the people that can grant you the right to do something. They're the people that pick the laws. And at this point in time, for the president, not having Congress is going to be getting anything done. Which, here's the thing. If Biden does get elected president, it is very likely that the Democrats might have both houses of Congress. Keep that in mind. Keep that in mind, because I think that is something I must analyze. And overall, we have to think. A lot of the things that Biden wants to do, would they even get all of this support in the Senate? Because remember, the Senate does have, for the Democrats, some conservative members. And when it favors them, they vote against the bunch. Because again, some of these people have to run re-election races that are very, very, very hard. And that is something we must analyze as well. Because remember, these politicians are always looking for votes. That's what I've been saying throughout this whole video. And truly speaking, we must analyze that that's a fact. and something has to happen. So right now, I mean, it's going to be a very interesting couple of weeks until we see the final results. By the way, I mean, we shouldn't be having election night results on election. It's going to be election weekend. It's going to be very, very long. So yeah, peacetime 420. Cuban voting a certain way in Florida is not a reflection of Hispanic at large. No, it's not. But however, we're seeing an increase, generally speaking, in all areas of the country. I can tell you this because one, I'm a Hispanic myself, and two, generally speaking, like just generally speaking, not even just Cubans, amongst all Hispanic ethnicities. And then if you look at it at a nationwide scale, you see him do perform very well. In Florida, it's a little bit more higher, I guess, the amount of support, because you do have these Cubans. However, at a nationwide scale, we're also seeing these big impacts for the Hispanic community for President Trump, which is something that he's done exceptionally strong. And with the Black community, and I think here's the thing. The Republican Party, we're starting to see it diversify more. We're starting to see the Republican Party get more of the African-American vote. We're seeing them get more. And I think that's a fact. They're getting more politicians like John James, like Tim Scott, like the Marco Rubios of the Republican Party that are coming out, and the Nikki Haley's that are bringing in this minority vote. Kim Klacik, she's running a race in Maryland. She's become an influential figure, or somewhat influential figure, in the Democratic Party, as we're seeing the Republican Party start its diversification process. You believe Biden will be an effective president with both chambers of Congress? I mean, I'm going to tell you this right now. All presidents, if they have their both chambers of Congress, Congress is going to be very, 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 very effective presidency, because you can essentially do whatever you please, whatever you want. Keep that in mind. So, I mean, overall, I mean, that is something to keep in mind. So let's just go and just do a quick recap of this debate. One, President Donald Trump performed very well when it came to attacking. Two, Biden did very, very well holding his ground and even attacking Trump. Three, moderating was pretty like even, and it was pretty good moderating. So that is something to keep in mind. And I think that's something, yeah, we have to consider. And overall, I would say the winner of the debate narrowly went to President Donald Trump. But if we have to put it on a percentage scale, I would be like less than a percentage point. I would have given it to the president. We saw very good segments, I guess, for the president during the segments about immigration and during the segments about foreign policy. We saw very good segments for Biden in other instances. And overall, it was one of the most interesting debates. I mean, it was I don't know which one was more civilized, the VP debate or this debate, because both of them were interesting. We saw the corruption. The corruption came up, not so much talked about Biden. It was like wiped over. We saw healthcare come up. That was like somewhat wiped over by Trump because he didn't want to talk about it that much. Overall, very interesting debate. And a lot of different things really came to impact it. And we saw many different features and many different things that truly came to impact this debate. Impacting the election, talking about that a little more. The impact is not going to be huge. Understand that. The impact on this election is going to be minimal, because we're already at a home stretch where over a very big part of the American electorate have already voted, with 35 million ballots cast the last time I checked. And in a lot of places, we're seeing a lot of these votes cast. A lot of people have made up their mind. And that is something we'll also analyze. We're not seeing as many undecided voters as in 2016. These debates are now going to have a big impact like they did in 2016. There's only 5% undecided voters. Keep that in mind. Overall, the general election looks like it's probably going to go to former Vice President Biden. And truly, this debate was one of the most interesting during this election. And it's definitely it's definitely like one for the history books in some ways, as we're going to see some key moments stick from this debate. Maybe not as much as going to be the historically crazy debate where everything was happening. However, it's going to be something that's going to be remembered for a long time. It's going to be remembered during the election. So, guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. If so, please give it a huge thumbs up, like, subscribe, and turn on post notifications to be up to date with our latest content. hope you enjoyed this live stream, and I hope you guys enjoyed listening to my reasoning. I hope you guys enjoyed listening to my thoughts on the debate. Hope you guys enjoyed all the different reasoning that all of you had in the chat. It was a very interactive chat. At some point, we had like messages coming in and out, and it was very, very interesting. And we will be having more election coverage as the days goes on. And come November 3rd, I will be going live in a more professional manner where I would do like a lot of different things. I would go through the election results. Please stay tuned for that. And guys, I would please really appreciate it if you're not yet subscribed. So please do so. And I hope to see you guys soon. I'll see you guys tomorrow, and goodbye.